Good evening, and what a busy and exciting Friday it has been, with Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her maiden budget as the finance minister of this country. There were a lot of expectations through the day. We've tried to dig out more and more information for you from that very exhaustive budget document, analyze it for you to really come to the basic point. What does this budget mean for you, the taxpayer? Now, in fact, before we could actually get to the facts, here are some of the 10 points that we have collated together. The income tax slab effectively has remained unchanged, at least for the most of the taxpayer community, but there has been a hike in fuel prices, 1 rupee increase in excise duty on petrol and diesel, and 1 rupee increase in the cess for road infra. On top of that, if you add the state taxes, the minimum hike would probably be around 2.5 rupees. Hike in customs for gold, which means gold becomes more expensive for you. Precious metals become more expensive for you. The one good thing that seems to have emerged is that there will be an additional 1.5 lakh tax deduction on loans for e-vehicles, an additional tax rebate on affordable homes, but this will only be till March 2021, so you only get to do it this year and next year. PAN and Aadhaar cards have now been made both valid for filing your tax returns. They're interchangeable when it comes to filing your ITR. The government said that they're making more efforts to make tax filing and tax return filing an easier thing for you. And in somewhere there was this very interesting word, pre-filed tax return. We'll try and analyze what that really means for you. Lump sum withdrawal of MPS funds, now 60% of that will be tax-free. Up till now, 40% of it was tax-free if you take it all at one go upon maturity. Some of those points that we brought out, and as I was going through it, I'm sure you would have figured that there was no big bang announcement. There was no big tax exemption that many were talking about. And effectively, that triggered this whole series of memes, even on social media. And the jokes were about middle class waiting for the finance minister to come out with some goodies, to come out with some good news for them, to maybe give them some more money in their hands in this way or that way. Nothing was said directly, and these were some of the memes that were actually doing the rounds today. But as you take a look at them, let me just also say that jokes apart, let's get down to real business and understand what does this budget mean for you. Gopal Agarwal, national spokesperson for the BJP, Vivek Kaul, senior journalist, he's been with us through the day, helping us understand this budget, cutting through the jargon for us. Abhishek Rastogi, tax partner with Khaitan and Company, will also help us understand what do all these little changes in the taxation policy really mean for you, the taxpayer. Hassan Rizvi, a political analyst, Tamal Bandyopadhyay, senior journalist, will help us with his insights on whether this is, any different and whether it has delivered on the expectations of the street. Nisha Chaudhary, also a senior journalist, always a pleasure to have her with us. Let me begin by going across to Mr. Abhishek Rastogi. He's the tax expert here. Mr. Rastogi, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to know, will I manage to save more or will I have to pay more? So which one is it?
See, I think the reaction is very mixed here. But I think more interestingly, what has been the key of this budget is, or at least on the indirect tax side, the message is very clear that we want to reduce the litigation. And I think that has happened by way of two schemes, which is Sabka Vishwas scheme, which means that all of the past litigation with respect to the central excise and service tax can now be, settled by way of huge waivers which have been offered for various categories, and the waiver would be as high as 70% of the tax waived, and with no interest and penalty. So I think the endeavor of the government is very clear that we want to reduce the litigation, especially the past disputes. If you see the GST collection number also as compared to the interim budget, the number now has been relatively decreased, and the alternative mechanism to get this revenue number would be from the past litigation, that is one, and also by providing certainty. And with respect to litigation, I think this budget has been very pragmatic, because the FM in her maiden budget announced for the Advanced Ruling Authority at a national level, which is to be formed to provide more consistency. So I think from that perspective, on the indirect tax side, it was a pragmatic budget to reduce the litigation. Now, to answer your question with respect to whether I pay more or I save more, etc., it's been very clear. Most of the benefits have gone to the middle class group. If we see the surcharge, the amount of surcharge has been significantly increased for the taxpayers who would fall within the tax bracket of 2 to 5 crores, and an extra surcharge even for the category of taxpayers where the income is more than 5 crores. So I think, it is very, very clear that the high income group would end up paying much more proportional higher taxes. And most of these benefits, if you will see with respect to the EVs which you mentioned, 1.5 lakh, or the housing loan interest benefits, etc., are all these meant for the middle class income group.
Okay.
So I think from that perspective, it's very clear that the most of the tax burden will have to be borne by the higher income tax categories. But I think what was very promising was the announcement with respect to e-assessments.
Okay.
Because I think there are a lot of
Mr. Rastogi, if you can hold on to that thought,
when it comes to tax
because I
scrutinies.
actually want
And
to dedicate a separate amount of time to e-assessments and some of the announcements that were made on that respect. So I'll come back to you on that point. But Vivek, do you agree that the middle class and the honest taxpayer whom Nirmala Sitharaman thanked repeatedly in her speech really got the better end of the deal here?
I mean, for the normal taxpayer, if you were to sort of look at it in a slightly less pessimistic way, there was no bad news. I mean, there were no, I mean, the tax slabs remain the same, and so on and so forth. Then there was the one piece of, I think, good news was the fact that for, homes of value up to 45 lakh, the interest deduction which is available on that home loan has been increased from 2 lakhs to 3.5 lakhs. Now, this is to the condition that you take a home loan during the course of this financial year. So, I mean, obviously for, people like, you and I living in Mumbai,
Right.
that does not impact us.
Yeah.
But for people in, cities like Pune, Hyderabad, NCR, not really Delhi, even Bangalore for that matter, and Chennai. I mean, this is a good move, and it will help people save an extra around 36,000 rupees in the first year by way of lower taxes.
But
Now,
this is only valid till 2021 March.
No.
So that's two rounds.
No,
that you get?
no. This is valid till if you take a loan till March 2020.
Okay.
But you continue getting the interest rate deduction. I mean, you can, but you have to take a loan now. I mean, within the course of this year, or if you've taken a loan after April 1st, it's still valid during this. So that was one good bit. The other interesting thing that I found in the budget, and I'm sure the government will elaborate on it in the days to come, was the talk about a model rental agreement. Now, a model rental act, sorry. Now, the problem in India, the housing problem in India is not just about, the fact that we don't build enough houses, but it is also a lot about the fact that, we build houses, we buy them, and then we keep them closed. Now, if you go to any of the big cities and you go to some of the newer areas, you'll find that a lot of homes have been bought and have been locked up. Now, which is primarily because most people do not like the idea of renting out their house, because they are afraid that the individual who has rented the house or the family who's rented the house will
Damage the house.
Yeah, I mean, will damage, and more than the damage, it's like that they won't leave.
Correct.
So that is if the Model Rental Act is sort of able to take that fear away from the minds of people, I think that will go a long way in solving the housing problem in the country, because you don't have to buy a house to live in it. I mean, I find that notion to be quite weird, but the entire sort of the family system in India, the way it is built. And one of the most important points there is that in order to get settled in life, you need to buy a house.
Yes.
Now, if more and more rented houses are available and then people can stay in them for longer stretches of time, and with the landlord not asking them to leave the accommodation after a period of 11 months is over, I mean, that will go a long way in making life and things simpler for people. But that is just a it is just a line, a couple of lines in the budget speech right now. But how and when it is implemented remains to be seen.
Okay. In fact, before I go across to our other panelists, let me quickly ask Gopal Agarwal if he wants to shed more light on this. Mr. Agarwal, is that the idea, to really open up a lot of these homes which are locked up, empty, not being used, and make it easier for people to rent housing?
I appreciate what has been said by the panelists, because that's a very important area and it's one of the objective definitely. And along with it, there are several other initiatives like low cost housing, interest rate exemptions, even those infrastructure in itself will, investment of the government in the infrastructure will give so much boost to the economy all around, because it will create demand for cement, steel, even construction industry is considered to be the most employment generating industry. So we need a boost in the housing sector, construction industry. That's also an important area. I think the whole budget is talking about all the sectors. It is working for the agriculture sector. It is talking about the women empowerment. It is working on investment, continuing the investment. There are big ticket financial sector reforms like debt market, DFI, development financial institutions, helping the NBFC sector through pool purchase, recapitalizing of the banking sector to the tune of 70,000 crores. So, and even opening up yesterday in the economic survey, it was said that investment is the major factor which will propel Indian economy to 5 trillion economy from current level of around 3 trillion economy. And for that, we need so many of resources. Though this budget has taken care of generation of resources. It has talked about debt market reform, FDI, even it has given itself, empowered itself through this foreign sovereign debt, opening up sovereign debt.
So let's take them point by point then, Mr. Agarwal.
This disinvestment side, the government.
Yes. Okay, let's take them point by point. And let me take that across to Mr. Tamal Bandyopadhyay. Mr. Bandyopadhyay, do you believe, like all of these things that Gopal Agarwal of the BJP just listed out, at the end of the day, what people wanted to watch out for is, will the budget be able to give us a vision to boost consumption? And that will then be the starting point for everything else to fall in place. Do you think that can happen?
Well, if you are talking about unleashing the animal spirit,
if there is investment, it will create.
Yes, Mr. Agarwal, I'll come back to you. I got your point. That's why when you raised the issue of investment in FDI, I took it up and I went ahead. Now let Mr. Bandyopadhyay reply.
Yeah, if you are asking me whether this budget will unleash the what you call the so-called animal spirit, I'm afraid I don't see that. I mean, it's an extension of the economic survey, and it's just it's an actually aspirational and a way of roadmap of getting into this 5 trillion economy. And it's not a consumption-led growth. It talks about it's actually export-led, so which is why this make in India, again the focus is on there, which is why the custom duties on certain items are there, so to discourage people to bring it from outside. So that's the part of it. But the one within the constraint, one good thing is that it has stuck to the fiscal deficit, which is actually brought it down marginally from 3.4% of GDP to 3.3%. But if you look at closely, it's a very fine arithmetic. Actually, it was 3.35. And now it has come down to 3.34. So by rounding off, it has come down from 3.4 to 3.3. Now, how has it come down? Because the nominal GDP growth, which was projected at certain level at the interim budget, now it has gone up. So when you are growing up, so obviously when you have a larger GDP growth you are talking about, then the deficit shrinks marginally. And it also talks about little bit of money coming, more money coming from RBI dividend and other PSU dividends, and also the disinvestments. But the tax generation target, the revenue generation target is pretty ambitious. So we are not very sure whether it will be able to meet that. But then you have the other part. We are yet to know the Jalan Committee recommendations, how much money RBI will transfer from its reserve to the government. So to that extent, it can square off. One important reform, I would say, I mean, if you call it reform, is this: the basically maiming or disabling the NHB, the National Housing Bank, as a regulator.
Yes.
I think the government wants NHB to remain as a refinance agency, not a regulator. So the regulations of mortgage company, housing finance companies, which is globally done by central bank, it is there. And then it talks about 1.1 trillion window for NBFCs, which the banks will pick up NBFC assets by a sort of credit guarantee by the government, and the government is ready up to 10% loss to take it. So
okay.
that soothes the many frayed nerves in the NBFC segment. And you have seen that the bond market actually rallied, because one very important announcement for the first time ever, and which historically RBI is against it, government has said that it will borrow, and later clarified, 10% of its government borrowing from overseas. In the past, we have seen, India Development Bond, Millennium Development Bond. These are all proxy sovereign borrowing by the Reserve Bank of India on behalf of the government to shore up the forex reserves in difficult crisis time. Now, this is a normal time, and government wants to experiment with that. Which is why, the bond market feels that the pressure on bond market will ease, because 10% of the money will be borrowed from overseas. But it has a flip side too. So we need to watch out for. I think overall, if you see within the constraint, it's just, it's tick boxing. It wants to do many things.
Correct.
For women, empowerment, to better education system, a lot of spending on infrastructure. So it's a tick boxing. I mean, you tick mark every box, what needs to be done to have a holistic framework to achieve 5 trillion economy. But as you said, that will it unleash the animal spirit? Will people consume more? I'm afraid I don't see that spirit here.
Okay, fair enough. You don't see that spirit here, and I agree with you. It was a lot of ticking these boxes. Fact of the matter also is that while it may have touched upon issues like women empowerment, a bigger role for women, we'll have to wait and see the fine print of these schemes to understand just how that is going to be done. And that was actually true for a lot of things that were mentioned and touched upon, including the whole 5 trillion economy ambition and dream that is being sold to the people of this country right now. Nirja Chaudhary, in many ways, I thought the message today by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, and even 6 months ago in the interim budget, was to tell the taxpayer, thank you so much for doing what you are doing. Thank you for honestly paying your tax. But you will have to continue doing that, because we need to build the country and the burden is on you. And so even though there were a lot of expectations of some kind of exemption, that's not come through. Would you agree?
I would say that, yes, I would agree with that. To my mind, the political message of the budget today was Nirmala Sitharaman herself. First finance minister, first woman finance minister. Of course, Indira Gandhi had held this position, but while she was prime minister. And we can go into the pros and cons of what she said, how disappointing it was or not disappointing. But she spoke for 2.25 hours and she held her own. She spoke with conviction. She said, I want to repeat this because I want to emphasize this. So, Finance Minister of India, part of the Cabinet Committee on Security, to that extent, women had come into their own. So she was, to my mind, the most important political message. And of course, she reached out to women as a political constituency today,
yes,
even more than has been done by the BJP in the past. Nari to Narayani, self-help groups, which is a very good thing, and enabling one out of the group to, take a loan of a lakh and overdraw, etc., etc. Number two, I would say that, everybody's been concerned because the major challenge before this government, Modi 2, has been the slowing down of the economy. So the budget was awaited, how the government planned to kickstart the economy. Also, given the global challenges, the trade war between America and China, and this is not likely to be resolved given the American elections next year. So the global factors will have a bearing on our economy even more. So I would say there were many things given to many people, and the emphasis of the government to help the poor, the Aam Aadmi, and to an extent the middle class, at least not add huge burdens on the middle class. Of course, there was something for the exemption on the housing loan, and or the tax relief, or the traders getting pension and so on. But overall, you didn't get a sense of the economy getting kick-started again. For instance, the informal sector slowing down, for instance, the farming distress, for instance, the job creation, which is going to be a big issue in election after election in the coming months and years. I think that was not really addressed as one had expected it would be. India Inc. would look after that. The creation of jobs. So that part of it, I think, was the disappointment today.
Okay, let me quickly go across to Hassan Rizvi, who's heard everybody out. Mr. Rizvi, where do you stand on this debate? Do you think that the taxpayers should now acknowledge and admit the fact that perhaps for now you need to play a larger role in nation building? The economy is in dumps, there's a jobs crisis, the rural economy and the poor need to be supported. So for now, we will have to continue pay more taxes on our income, on our fuel, even on gold.
I think we should look beyond what a middle class thinks about paying tax and tax paying classes, because the budget is also about dealing with the more than 76% of the population who lives in the rural India, because the kind of in the backdrop of second Modi government, which when they have got the massive mandate, we were not expecting what Charles Lindbaum have said about the incrementalism. The budget, without going into the much detail and dealing with the data, we can summarize it. We were expecting at least the massive overall of the economy and restructuring of the economy, which was missing here. It is like an incremental approach where rightly has been said one of the panelists that tick marking the boxes, because in the backdrop of the 45% the rise in the unemployment rate in the last 45 years, we were expecting going much beyond, like pacifying every nook and corner. And second point, which is very important, and in the rural distress, agriculture sector, farmer sector, if you look at the budgetary allocation to deal with the farmer distress, they have not raised any allocation. The second point, primary healthcare sector, I have not gone through much detail into the data because that is the economist's job, but from the political perspective, the preventive healthcare which is missing, because the recent happening in Bihar, encephalitis issue, and during Yogi government time, when we saw the appalling state of the health sector,
So,
and
Mr.
particularly
Rizvi,
the preventive
may I just
healthcare
interrupt
measure.
you for a bit? And I do know that you have some valid points there, but as the way we've planned this, if we sit and have a generic discussion every hour, then we won't get anywhere. So while healthcare and education are being taken up by us and being discussed in detail, including the farm crisis, right now I just want to focus more on reviving consumption and the economy because as a consequence of that. So if you can just give us our views on that issue, it will be easier to go ahead then.
No, as far as, because what worries exactly, because the consumption as far as is concerned, because external borrowing is not going to provide much yield unless I agree that the investment in the infrastructure sector, reviving the infrastructure, will lead towards the higher consumption. I agree with that. But if you look at it, because the past experience shows that this investment which was started during the Vajpayee time era did not provide a much employment. So when we don't have the much employment opportunity, how we are going to, I mean, ensure the consumption? Because it's like a cause and effect relationship.
Okay. All right. So let me go back to Vivek Kaul, and Vivek, I just wanted to come back to the point that was being made earlier about reviving private investment, and that was the bane of the Modi government in its first tenure. They just couldn't get that problem resolved. Everybody was watching out for what they will do this time. Relaxing of FDI norms in certain sectors like media and aviation. They've also said that for the social sector, you can, they're considering starting a stock exchange. And like Mr. Tamal Bandyopadhyay was pointing out, certain other ways of fundraising. Will that be enough?
See, the thing is this, and I mean, I have my doubts about it simply because when the Indian guy is not investing, why will a foreign guy invest? Because, ultimately, if the Indian corporates do not have confidence in the Indian economy, why do you expect foreign corporates to have confidence in the Indian economy? I mean, there is a basic a logical fallacy there. So, I mean, so it's good to sort of open up the economy, and I mean, see, at the end of the day, the government can only take steps. So, as far as taking steps is concerned, yes, they're doing that. So, one way to sort of, get this going is to ensure that companies which are going to the NCLT and going through the insolvency process, I mean, there the action needs to move much faster than it currently is. Now, look at what has been happening to the entire, SR Steel deal, where ArcelorMittal has bought it, but it still hasn't got control of the company. Now, ArcelorMittal, is buying SR Steel for 42,000 crores. Now, that is a lot of money. I mean, and so you need to sort of get these bankrupt companies going and get the foreigners interested in that, because that is a ready-made asset which they can sort of buy and continue with business and make money instead of sort of starting a greenfield project and then waiting for, So, yeah, so
okay.
that's one thing that possibly can be done. Yeah.
Okay, let me take that point across actually to Tamal Bandyopadhyay as well. Mr. Bandyopadhyay, do you agree? Because every day, the conversation that crops up is, well, nobody is setting up new projects, nobody is expanding their production lines, nobody is expanding and investing in manufacturing or services. Where are people going to get more jobs from? How will they then get more money, and how will they spend that money? Is there a solution to that problem in this budget?
No, I think 2 points I would like to make, which Mr. Kaul was saying, that if we are not convinced about, if we are not putting in money, why would others come and put in money? Now, in my interaction with foreign investors, why I find is this: they are more excited about India than ourselves. That's if you feel internally, there's much talk about no investment, sort of talk of nothing is happening here and all. But if you see from an overseas investor perspective, I think India is one of the few countries where actually things are happening. That's what they feel. Where else? I mean, as growth is coming down, but where else you have even this growth? So that's one point I'm making out. Foreign investors, I find it, continue to be excited about India, despite all whatever you say, and they are more excited about India than what we are Indians here. That's one thing. The budget focuses a lot on the startups. I think if you talk about employment generation, etc., I think that's this government way of looking at it. A lot of focus on startup, a lot of focus on infrastructure. But at the end of the day, my feeling is, the burden on kickstarting growth is, they've been passed on to the central bank, because what happens is this: by sticking to the fiscal deficit target, actually bringing it down from 3.4 to 3.3 and channeling part of the government borrowing to overseas for the first time, so freeing up that kind of money here in India, I think it is ensured rate cuts will happen. I personally feel that I will not be surprised if there's a rate cut even in August. So there are 50 basis point in staggered way probably rate cut, because we are in low inflation regime and fiscal deficit within the target, and the government will not burden the local bond market with its borrowing. It is going out and all. So it's a situation has been created. I think the onus of of growth now has passed, is on the country's central bank.
Yes.
So we will see liquidity in the system, we will see a lower interest rate, and that will sort of work as a catalyst for investment. That will encourage those the fence-sitters who are not yet taking a call, they will take a call when money becomes cheaper.
Okay, so
I
let
think
me
that's
also
a
very
very
quickly
clear
on that
design,
aspect
I see it.
ask you that are we out of the woods when it comes to the crisis in the banking sector? Will they begin to lend more?
No, definitely not. Definitely. No, I mean they will, because it spoke about 13% credit growth, but you have to see in context 13% credit growth because NBFCs are not lending. Now till last year we are talking about banking sector's credit growth or tepid because in NBFCs were lending hugely. Now NBFCs do not exist.
Right.
So if you talk about, that's one disappointment I have, it has not addressed the structural problem of the banking sector. Consolidation is not the solution because at the end of the day you remain there. I mean, consolidation does not necessarily bring in efficiency. And so this 70,000 crore recap, which has been announced, and it is through bond, so there is no direct impact on the fiscal deficit as such. It will be a recap bond. It's just a paper entry, accounting entry. But will it be just like you need money, I'll give you money, or will the government look for actually structural, addressing the structural issues of the public sector banking industry? That I'm not very convinced about that. And NBFC, yes, it has made something 1.1 trillion rupees, but again there's a deep rooted problem on the NBFCs. So if you are asking us that is the financial sector woes are over, definitely not, but happy to see the government is aware of it and is taking steps, at least started taking steps.
Okay, let me quickly bring in a couple of our viewers on the phone line before we go back to the panelists. Mahendra on the phone line calling us from Mumbai. Good evening. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, see, at the end of the day, all this is fine. All budget, everything is fine. At the end of the day, as a common man, what is getting cheaper for us? We want on our tables, we want, food to eat, fruits, something that is affordable for all of us.
Yes.
So does it really help us? Everything seems to be getting more and more and more expensive. So where is the real promise of Aache Din? Okay, you want to get Nirav Modi back, you want to get Maliaji back, but at the end of the day, how do we benefit? What do we need on the table at the end of the day? Affordable food?
Absolutely. Okay, let me take that question across to Gopal Agarwal and then we'll go to our next caller. Mr. Agarwal, do you want to respond to this taxpayer?
I can't understand what logic he is talking about. If you are getting the 4 lakh crores of money which has been taken away under the NPA and recovering from the corporate sector and even reducing the NPA to 1 lakh crore in a year and then recapitalizing the bank for lending to all the even smaller Mudra loan, PSB 59, even NBFC. So ultimately how the economy will work? Economy will work when we have sound policies where there are no leakages, where there are transparency in government decision making, where there is a higher tax collection, no leakages.
Okay.
So that way the common man will be benefited. Or you just want that only you should transfer to your bank account amount and then fleece away all the revenue that is being generated, which was happening under previous governments. The credit formation, the NPA accumulation, the leakages in the delivery, the gaps in the tax compliance, large-scale corruptions, those all are now the history, part of the history. Do you, in this more than 5.5 years, have you seen any headline that any of the senior party member or government senior party, government minister, anything has been involved into any corruption? And what was the case before? Every day on the headline, these were coming. So this is governance. Even you are talking about e-assessment, how much effort we are putting up on putting up a complete, we know that there is corruption in the income tax department, there is harassment for individuals and even for small businesses. We are putting everything into the technology driven, transparent, no human interventions. So this is you should appreciate, and even on the pulses side,
well, I hope
the
that
prices
has,
have come down. Inflation is
well, I hope that
below
has answered
4%.
Mahendra's
It is
question.
well within the target.
I don't know if
So
that's convinced him.
instead of appreciating,
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. Let me go across to Mr. P. Kumar on the phone line from
no, he will
Kanyakumari. Go
not be
ahead, please.
convinced because his argument is
Yeah,
wrong.
Tanvi,
Well, you can't
just
say
give
his
me
argument. Sorry, Mr. P. Kumar, just 30 seconds. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, not fair to say his argument is wrong. He's a taxpayer. He has his own right to say, well, at the end of the day, I have to make my
No, he's
ends
talking
meet
a
for
wrong
me, for my
logic.
family. I have to ensure that they have food on their table. And that's the
So we
tangible
are doing
benefits
it.
that, or impact
So
that he
that
is
is the
looking at.
government is doing
So
every
you
economy.
don't have to pass a
Tanvi,
judgment on anybody's
that's
view.
what I told you.
You've presented your
So
view.
that's what I told you.
You've presented your view. Let's not pass
No,
judgment on
I'm
other
not
people's views.
passing.
They're voters at the end of
You
the day.
pass every judgment. No,
Okay,
you are
let me-
passing every judgment every
I-
second on us.
No, I only
Every
question the
second
government.
you
I don't
pass a
pass
judgment on
judgments.
politician,
Okay,
and then you say
let me
you
quickly bring in
cannot
Mr.
say.
P. Kumar and let's listen to what one
So
more
I am
viewer
also
has to say.
questioning his logic.
Go ahead, Mr. Kumar. Sorry, I interrupted
I
you
am
earlier.
questioning his logic.
Okay. So Tanvi, just give me 2 minutes to put the things into perspective. So the problem we are facing, our tax compliances, we have 6 or 7% only people who are paying the tax. Whereas you will see America, 47 to 50% people are paying tax. You have 35 crore people who are earning 60 rupees a day. So government is failing miserably to have that mismatch happening. Second thing, this is appalling that government is going for PSU, selling back this land, monetizing that. Why they go after this PSU? We have made wonderful organizations like ONGC, SAIL and all. They should not play around. BJP should not play around with the lands and all. The SAIL experiment was so miserable failure. 15 lakh crores they have given the incentive, and today, 2 days back, Mr. Piyush Goyal has said only 5 lakh crore is coming out of SAIL. So why you are playing with the land? And third thing, agriculture, textile, and your housing is the biggest. Housing you give all doling out. Don't take any tax kind of a thing. There, housing itself will have a passive generation of employment. Your furniture, your FMCG, your white goods will go up. And second thing, tax compliance, we should not have any kind of this Inspector Raj coming again, because your tax compliance, 10% is costing. Whatever we raise, 10% is the income tax collection cost. So we have to, give some more relaxation over there. And third thing, what I wanted to know.
All right, now, Mr. Kumar, let me just take some of those points, and you've made some very interesting points. I appreciate that. Thank you for calling us. Let me, in fact, go to Mr. Rastogi on that last point that P. Kumar was raising, Mr. Rastogi, and you were, talking about tax assessment and the whole use of technology to simplify it, to simplify filing your tax returns. One interesting concept that Nirmala Sitharaman introduced was this pre-filled form. Now, can you explain it to our viewers? What does it mean and how will it help us?
So basically what happens is that this pre-filled form gives lot of details which are automated from the system. So for instance, if you are trading in securities and you trade in equity and there is a long-term capital gain due to the buy and the sale, that differential profit gets calculated from the system arithmetically and comes and pops up in your return. So there are two benefits to it. One, that the government is sure that there is no tax leakage. The taxpayer is also very certain that none of his income by mistake is not reported. Now, so this is just one example. Now, the government wants to replicate this auto numbering or the auto computation which comes automatically to the return for a lot of these parameters, and I think this is a wonderful unique idea, not only because of the fact that there is less chance of tax evasion, but also there will be less chances from the taxpayers end who genuinely would want to pay that. So I think a lot of this popping up of the data in the return automatically will ease the complete system.
But will it lead to some more possibility of an harassment? What happens if what the tax man is telling me to pay up is not matching with what I believe I need to pay up? What happens in that case? Won't it lead to more scrutiny and questions? Is it legitimate to have a fear of harassment there?
Now, see what happens is the number automatically pops up and comes in the return. Now, you always have an option to change that. The moment you change that, you will have to give some reason in case there is a mismatch. Now, how it gets implemented is we still have time to see, but of course there will be an option, which today also happens. Like for instance, the amount which comes up in 26 AS, which is with respect to the TDS, you feel that there is some amount of the TDS which has been wrongly deducted. You would not automatically take it to your income. You would make a disclosure while filing the return that this amount has come up wrongly, and you would intimate. So there are provisions in the law which provides you to intimate. But more interestingly is on the e-assessment side, because a lot of this harassment which you were mentioning happens, Tanvi, on the assessments. And
Correct.
now there will be a centralized agency. There will be no human interface. And I think that's the very good initiative of the government, because a lot of this harassment by the tax officers which happen at the time of the assessment goes for a toss and remains only academic now. There will be no human intervention.
Okay.
Even the taxpayers would not come to know that who's the officer assessing. It goes to the central authority. So I think that's very innovative. That has been tested on a pilot basis. But I think the announcement in this budget would lead it to the next level. So
Okay.
I think the government deserves an applaud there.
All right, all right. Fair enough. Well, one can only hope if this comes in, and that means that obviously the government has your transaction details, your data, your income details, your investment details, which is why they are now generating this, tax calculation for you. And in that sense, they will also be able to bring in more people under the tax net. I don't know to what extent this will work, but it looks like something that we can look at. Nimsha Chaudhary, the other thing, including this step, seems to suggest that more and more the government is bringing in Aadhaar as a tool to, link all of its schemes to it, to link tax paying to it, to genuinely make it that innocent social security number, that unique identification number, and create a central database for us citizens. There is some criticism of that idea. Do you have a view on that?
I think they've said Aadhaar or PAN card. They have not made it only Aadhaar or only PAN card. So both options are there. And I think this e-assessment also is, taking away the human agency that we were just talking about, is also something worth experimenting with, whether it will reduce the harassment to the taxpayer, or whether, you go in for, suppose you cannot deal with this e-business. Will you be more at a loss, more at sea about what to do if, as they say, there was a mismatch? So some kind of other options may be needed, but I think as we experiment with it, it may throw up new problems which can be resolved. Certainly, Nirmala Sitharaman, as finance minister, has, gone in for several new things.
Yes.
But above all, to my mind, if I may just end on this note, is, she spoke almost like Narendra Modi speaks.
Yes.
Out of 2.25 hours or 1.5 hours was selling a dream, $5 trillion economy in 5 years, big ticket things. This is what we want to do, education, water, health. Of course, I'm also very disappointed public health was not given the kind of attention and primacy that it should have been given, as I said, Muzaffarpur and deaths by malnutrition of children year after year after year. But that apart, it is where is the money going to come from? That has not been spelled out. We will do this, but where is the revenue going to come from?
Yes.
I think it is a very skillful exercise once again in the management of public perception of an economy slowing down, but the government going in for, what the positives, what has gone up in, the collection of direct taxes, or NPAs coming down by 1 lakh crores. So it was a very skillful exercise again of public perception.
Well, she spoke for almost 2 hours, and like you said, she did. In fact, that was going to be my next point. Beautifully lay out a vision for the next 5 years of the Modi government. She didn't speak at all about fund allocation. That's usually such a big part of the finance minister's budget speech and an essential part where we are told that this sector and that health sector and education and infra will get this much of funds from the government's kitty. But that obviously is available in the document, and over the next few days, we will do a detailed analysis of it. But like Nirja Chaudhary pointed out, this was more like a vision document, laying out a vision that in second tenure, what is it that the Modi government intends to do? Push and build on connectivity to bring and bridge the urban and rural divide, revive the rural economy, kickstart the private investment, and thereby spur the growth in this country. And in all of this, maybe right now, benefits, clear, tangible benefits, money coming directly in your hands right now for the taxpayer isn't on the list. But if all of this works out, then it will also be the taxpayer who ends up benefiting with the country at a better place. So let's hope that what has now only been laid out as an intent actually is followed up with some action. That remains to be seen, and that will then perhaps be the turning point for our country's economy. We will keep getting you more insights as we analyze this document over the next few days, individually on all of these sectors from health and education. So stay tuned to Mirror Now. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on this debate.